Hey there, this is Dr. Coates. Just wanted to give you a brief um, rundown of the two things that I think are the most difficult about Unit 1, at least the way that I teach it. Coming up with your own primary text and understanding what exactly that means and what to do with it, and then also how to apply the core readings to that primary text. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to be using Camtasia, which I hope will work, and that will allow me to put some images into this as I'm talking later on. Um, so, some of you may have written close readings before. This is another name for that. A primary text is, from semiotics, if that makes a difference. Instead of a primary source, which has, I think, more to do with the physical existence of data, a primary text is just your object of study. You get to put your own boundaries around it. And in part, this is a challenge. Go out and seek something that represents what you care about, and then come back and analyze it for me. The Unit 1 is the one that engages most actively with critical thinking. And so if you look at the grading rubric for the Unit 1 paper that's on Blackboard, excuse me, it's shaking. If you look at the grading rubric that's on Blackboard, you'll see that it's fully 50% of the grade is having to do with asking questions and then analyzing evidence in order to help you answer that question. And then, of course, there's using the core readings and putting together a logical argument. Let's see, do I get the badger in there? There we go. There's the kimmer as well. Okay, so it's kind of like close reading, but it's also a lot having to do with selection. The point is to think about the digital object or interaction that you find from a particular angle, and the core readings will help you do that. So sometimes in life, all we have is an object from the past with very little context provided. For a long time, for example, archaeologists knew very little about the Minoan civilization of ancient Greece. The island of Crete is where it was. It's a tiny island. And except for the Minotaur myth in Greek myth and some pottery, and this will be the first image I'm embedding, all we could do is extrapolate from the art found on vases and see what these people, tended to value, what they knew, So we know that Minoans know about octopuses. That's a valuable insight into their society. Also, they knew that the octopus's native habitat involved coral and seaweed. That's important, rather than just what they were about to pull up in their nets. Having said that, we know that the Minoans sustained themselves by fishing, and occasionally were startled enough by cephalopods to draw them on a vase. So I don't know if this had some religious significance or was just the way that they decorated things. It may be impossible to know, but you can look at a vase and notice the things that are there and try to make some inferences from it. Okay, now consider this second image, which is a picture of a chair in my living room. My family owns 5 Hitchcock chairs. A 6th one had the back leg gnawed off by a Labrador retriever when my wife was very young. The set of chairs are passed down within her family, and despite being very uncomfortable, are still in use in our dining room. They are slender and elegant, with 4 vertical rods providing an early version of lumbar support to the back of the seat, and they sport a backward sloping curve away from the seat to a height of 8 inches below my shoulder. This is another reason why I find it extremely uncomfortable. Though they have been painted many times over, the chairs originally had a stenciled pattern along the topmost back slat, which you can see faintly. As far as context, I can tell you that the Hitchcock chair was a design made by Lambert Hitchcock, an American carpenter and designer in the early 19th century. His chairs were a response to the Baroque ornamentation of the previous generation, and instead of floridly painted scenes, his stencils were attractive yet cost-effective, kind of like the Model T of chairs. Although quite sturdy, his chairs were simple and easily assembled. His furniture was among the first mass-produced factory furniture in the U.S., and it meant that many more people could own quality furniture rather than having to make it themselves or, sit on stumps or something. That's my description of the chair in its original context. Now, several things are conveyed by this chair beyond the claim of all chairs. I am a chair, come sit on me. Right? Hitchcock's chairs represented a move toward a simpler, sparser aesthetic, one that substituted functionality and effectiveness for artistic expressivity. One chair was exactly like another, and that was a virtue of the chair rather than a bug. Chairs didn't have to be like canvases, or rather, there could be something akin to mass-produced art, and that's good because more people would be able to enjoy their furniture as semi-art objects, right? Well, one other thing that we can divine from this chair, this is how tall Americans were on average in 1820. So about a foot shorter than me, I'd guess. But that doesn't mean that's the only meaning that we can derive from this chair, or that mine is necessarily better than others. Now the thing to do is to watch a third example of a primary text, and this is a video taken from, I think, at Coachella a few years ago. It's sometimes called the shirtless dancing guy video, and some of you may have seen this in your 112 classes. I'm going to show it to you with the sound turned off, but I'll also provide a link so that you can find the argument that is being made by the person who posted it in the first place, and also because I borrowed it and I need to give credit where credit is due. But I want you to watch it first without sound, because the voiceover is such a compelling argument, and it's difficult to go back to the original after you've heard it. Okay? So watch it muted, keeping in mind that every frame of the video is going to be evidence of some sort, and if you wanted to, you could stop it at a certain second and say, at 2 minutes, 11 seconds, this is what happened. A description of like that would be evidence. That's what it is.
Okay, I said it was going to be on mute, but I realized that this is my opportunity to actually talk to you about what's going on in the video. As you can see, there is a most likely drunk dancing person, and he doesn't have a shirt on, and he doesn't have any inhibitions. These are things that you would notice right away. I don't know exactly why people are recording this, but oh, here's another person. Probably also drunk. I don't have any proof of this. I can tell you that there are two people dancing weirdly. Definitely a white person that danced, by the way. I don't want to cast any aspersions or anything like this, but and you kind of need to know what sort of music is playing in the background, and you'll be able to if you go to the link that's at the bottom here. But they're dancing carefree, that kind of thing. Definitely. Oh, okay, here's an unfortunate person. Another person joining the dance. They all have moves, as you can see. It's a strange thing to consider. That's for men. And you have people watching from the sidelines going, what the hell's going on there? More and more of them. Somebody filming. And now, oh, wait, ladies have graced us with their presence. The arm thing seems to be catching on. Why is it that it takes so long for women to get up and go into the song? Is it just that it looks so silly that only men would stoop to something like that? Or is it that, women need to have safety in numbers or something like that? There is a gender argument, in other words, that could be made out of this particular event. There's also a race argument that could be made, race and class, that you would take a very specific sort of person to go to the concert and then have this particular reaction to it, and then also to, have this be the best things they could come up with in order to celebrate the fun that they're all having. There's also a leadership lesson to be made from this, and that is what the YouTube video itself, if you go to the link, is going to point you to, and I'm going to stop there.
So the other thing I want to just point out is that it doesn't have to be only one thing that we can derive from it. If your main question for this paper is, why is this interesting? And it is. You're to come up with one way that this thing is interesting. It's not going to be the only way. But the more you're thinking about where you want to take the paper, the easier it will be for you to figure out what angle you want. And the core readings are going to be the things that help you come up with that angle, if this makes sense. We have 5 different authors, only 4 of which were mandatory to read and respond to. But Those 5 are going to be talking about very specific data themselves, right? I mean, Shirky is talking about newspapers. It's probable that you're not going to be writing about newspapers yourselves, although it's possible. There's a Malcolm Gladwell chapter from the book that I gave you about Blue's Clues, and I think it's pretty unlikely that someone in my class would be writing about that, although you never know. So it's not that you're going to be using this as like a pot of facts that you're going to go to, take some stuff out of, and then cite once. These are ways of thinking about reality. In this case, stuff that happens on social media. Gladwell is there to help us think about why things go viral. Shirky is there to help us think through what happens when something like social media completely disrupts multiple different business models and well, frankly, most aspects of our cultural existence. What happens then? Hampton is there to help us think through whether or not the internet is going to be socially enabling or disabling. These are important questions, right? But you don't have to be writing about Facebook in order to use a concept like the spiral of silence. You would just need to make it applicable to a different situation. So what you do is you find the idea that you're interested in. You take it out of its immediate context. You sort of refine it into its abstract form, and then you reapply it. And by the way, doing these 4 steps, that generates text words for your Unit 1 paper. So this is going to be your friend in terms of getting out to 1,400 words. You want to choose the 2 that you think you'll also be using for your final paper, because I'm going to be requiring you to use at least 2 core readings in the research argument paper as well. So please do get used to using these. And use them as a lens that will allow you to see things within your primary data that you wouldn't be able to see without them. So that's my best advice about primary texts and the core readings. And I will entertain any questions that you might have over email. So please do ask them.